Biodinamičko poljodjelstvo utemeljio Rudolf Steiner na svojim predavanjima 1924. godine. Čini ga širok raspon tehnika od sadnje po mjesečevom kalendaru do raznih bioloških preparata koji oživljavaju mikrobiološku aktivnost tla. Rezultat je plodnije tlo, zdravije biljke i životinje. Biodinamički raj danas je Australija i to prije svega zahvaljujući čovjeku imenom Alex Podolinsky koji je ostvario Steinerovu želju da biodinamika postane dostupna svim seljacima. Marljivo radeći od ranih 50-ih, on je Steinerova učenja ostvario u praktičnom smislu i to na kontinentu gdje je tlo slabo i krhko, a klima nepovoljna. Biodinamika je stvorila biološki aktivna tla najviše kvalitete i to u uvjetima u kojima se to činilo nemogućim. Zato se danas u Australiji biodinamički uzgoj prakticira na 800.000 hektara, u rasponu od malih farmi do farmi koje zauzimaju 4.000 hektara, što je bez premca u svijetu. Sa 55 godina rada iza sebe, Alex Podolinsky najstariji je živući pionir biodinamike. Pola stoljeća rada pretrešćemo ovdje, na rubu znanosti. Dobro večer. Alex Podolinsky, veteran je pionir biodinamike, jedan učenik Rudolfa Steinera koji je još tamo negdje 20. godina izrazio želju da jednog dana biodinamika bude dostupna svim farmerima. Alex Podolinsky taj sam zapravo oživotvorio u Australiji gdje je donio prije 50 godina tu disciplinu, tu zapravo umijeće poljodjelstva, a evo kao što vidimo ne prestaje ni danas. Hello. So, can you recall when did you for first time meet biodynamics and how did you bring it to the Australia?
I met biodynamics already as a child. Very little existed. And after the war, I was at university and helped get a Steiner school going in Freiburg and was warned by the French Sûreté, the secret police, that the Russian Repatriation Commission wanted to catch me, and I fled to Australia within 3 days, and once there I realized it was a country's country and I should practice what I knew and could develop in farming. Instead of being a teacher, they wanted me to be a teacher. I was the only trained Steiner teacher in Australia, but I chose agriculture and developed a biodynamic method as it did not exist yet. Mm-hmm. Steiner had made certain suggestions, but he was not a farmer, and there was no actual agricultural method. Agriculture means soil culture, mm-hmm. and there was nothing in his course about how the method of farming. Only a few important suggestions. Mm-hmm.
Rudolf Steiner had one direct teacher, one direct pupil, the student, that was Pfeiffer. Did you meet him?
Yes, Pfeiffer was selected by Steiner to develop the preparations, the quantities used, how to make them, and Steiner invited him to his house. Pfeiffer lived for 7 years in the house of Steiner like a son. And at the death of Steiner, there was disagreement and jealousy from other people who had worked with Steiner. And Pfeiffer left to Holland, England, and then finally America, where he perfected the methodicity of making preparations and application, etc.
Mm-hmm. Did you learn from him?
Well, I was at his Lily Kolisko, who was senior to him in Steiner's environment and had helped make the preparations, and I was in touch with Pfeiffer. We exchanged preparations. He found some of ours better than his own, and we was interested in how we made them. Late in his life, contra to Steiner, he stated that only experts should be making the preparations. Steiner wanted every peasant to make his own, and it just was a fiasco. They were of no value. They were badly made, as is still the case in Germany today. And you European countries have followed the German system and have had very little result, which has changed considerably since they are using our methods, what in Italy is called Australian professional biodynamic method. And I have introduced that to Croatia last year, and there are already very clear results from it.
Before we explain which circumstances led to the great success of biodynamics in Australia, can you briefly, what is biodynamics, why it is called biodynamics, and what preparations and what techniques we are talking about?
All soils on Earth, especially on the big production areas, have become as hard as this and actually can't take water in. That is why the rivers are flooding. A river system has a vein system with a Danube going 200 kilometers to both sides, but the soil must be able to take water in. Only 10 to 20% of the water is in the river, the rest is in the vein system. And because the soils are so hard, 3 dissertations in Australia at a university have compared the water intake capacity of a biodynamic farm and of a conventional neighbor. And in the first hour on these soils, virtually just the top gets wet. No water is taken in. With us, all the water goes in. That feeds the vein system. This is a situation on Earth that has never occurred before, that all the soils through modern farming techniques, which I can explain, have become impervious to water. And so one can't go back to what peasants did in the 2,000 years in Europe, keeping soil alive without any science, but they did. And they were serfs of aristocrats. The aristocrats never worked and didn't know any of the skills the peasants and serfs had. Something new had to come, and a new impulse, and that is in the biodynamic preparations, if they are made right and applied right. Now, Steiner, in his agricultural course, emphasized that stirring had to be done energetically to activate the main, became one of the most leading bacteriologists on Earth. He discovered that the cow manure that goes in horns to make the 500, the basic spray for activating soil, that when the manure goes in, there are only fecal bacteria. When after 3 to 4 months, the horns buried in winter, that means in a temperature when there's very little or no bacterial activity or biological activity in the soil, conventional science can't explain why this substance, cow manure, changes to a colloidy human product, which is 500, that in the 500 per gram are 500 million aerobic bacteria and no fecal bacteria. They're aerobic bacteria which in part have never been discovered before or named. Either they're totally new from this process, or they're bacteria that just have not been discovered and named. And now, when we have this product, 500, he called it 500 because in each gram he found 500 million aerobic bacteria. And the original name for this substance is therefore 500, whereas some 30 or 40 years ago in Germany, in my opinion, because they had no results, they wanted to make this less mysterious, and they called it horn manure, which it is not. It's not a manure, it's a totally new substance. When I was asked in Australia, after I had already 2 years' success, and there were other farmers, and they asked me, why is it called 500? I said, because it does at least 500 things. And they laughed, and nobody's ever dared ask me again. It was speaking from confidence of success. Now, this substance, say, sprayed on a farm of 5,000 or 10,000 hectares of sand, white sand with an organic matter level of 0.33%, in 2 years will have 2.5 from 0.33 to 2.5 organic matter, but as humus and not as just organic matter. And there's a huge difference between that. Humus in conventional science is like peat moss. It can run through your hands. Humus is a colloid substance. I mean, before, conventional organic matter is like a dusty peat moss. Humus is a colloid that can hold 70% of its volume as water. And that is where microbes and worms put, in nature's design, put NPK, nitrogen, phosphate, and kalium, in a water-soluble form. In nature's design, the elements originally are in rock, and they have to be freed from that rock, or they have to be freed from the roots and plant substance in which they also are, by worms and microbes working. But where they put the water-soluble NPK is always a colloid. The NPK does not get to the soil water, whereas since Justus von Liebig's discovery in the middle of the 19th century that plants can take in elements only in a water-soluble form, artificial fertilizer has been made, and the soil water, the groundwater, which plant roots should take up for transpiration and which should be in nature's design pure water-soluble NPK, have the NPK there. The result is your big plants growing round here, the maize everywhere, the leaves much bigger because they're blown up with salt and water, and much darker, they're blue-green. That is when plants have to take in more NPK because it's in the groundwater than in nature's design, where the NPK is only in humus and through white hair roots are taken up under discretion of the sun, telling exactly how much they should feed and not too much. That is the real origin of organic agriculture. The organization of nature has to be understood, and that is what I have made obvious in my lectures, in my work with farmers around the globe. And it's very hard to give a full explanation here. We would need to have pictures and whatever else, like in my lecture books or when I lecture.
In what extent is biodynamic agriculture developed in Australia these days? How many acres are cultivated?
Very many. Our largest farm is what we call a station where cattle are run inland, and that is 500,000 hectares. And we have many farms, 5,000 to 10,000 hectares, wheat and sheep properties. We have dairy farms. We have everything there is on earth. But 98% of all the plants and animals we eat in Australia are only there since white man came. And they have acclimatized and ecologized in 200 years, which is a miracle. So we have a very wide acreage. I don't know exactly how much. I don't add that.
How can we explain such a huge success? How can we explain such huge success of biodynamics in Australia? Is it because of a very bad quality of the soil? So farmers should...
our soils are the poorest on earth, and the climate is the worst. It is because we have developed the method as it was originally intended, and that has not been done in Germany. And Germany has spread that in Europe, and we have quite a large number of farms in Italy with similar success to us. The biggest known is Agri Latina. They supply 3 semi-trailers of vegetables, 30 different kinds per day, and have for 10 years not introduced anything from outside their farm. That is how our farms run. Conventional agriculture says all NPK that leaves the farm as produce must be replaced, and that is wrong. Through photosynthesis of the right green manure, not just one plant, but at least 25 plants, through photosynthesis, we bring new elements into the soil, first into plants, and we enrich in the soil and replace the elements that have gone with produce. On sandy soils where there was a great lack of NPK, we make more and more through this method. Mm-hmm. And only when a plant actually functions, as I describe in my lectures, functions so the plant can take in enough its cosmic force, sun energy and CO2 from the air is the main base of all wood is made by photosynthesis. That is the main base of the new nutrition that we bring into the soil.
Hvala. Čujemo sada što su u bogatom životopisu Aleksa Podolinskog ispričali ljudi koji se njegovim metodama u Hrvatskoj i služe. Aleks Podolinsky jedan je od najistaknutijih pionira biodinamičke proizvodnje. Učenik je doktora Infreda Pfeiffera, koji je izravno učio od oca biodinamike Rudolfa Steinera. Od Drugog svjetskog rata živio u Australiji gdje je postao utemeljitelj australske škole biodinamike.
Aleks nakon što je počeo biodinamiku, nitko od susjeda se njemu nije približavao. Zbog toga što ovo je čovjek koji ne zna poljoprivredu. Nakon toga, nakon 5-6 godina, kad su ljudi vidjeli što on radi, kakova je zemlja, kad je on došao na tržište, jedini je na tržište se pojavio sa višnjom, zbog toga što sve ostale višnje je poharala suša i bolest. Nakon toga su ljudi krenuli k njemu, dolaziti, oduševljavati se biodinamikom i počeo je širiti biodinamičku poljoprivredu širom Australije. Aleks je krenuo sam i nakon tih 6 godina kad se ljudi počeli oduševljavati, skupio je otprilike 12 ljudi, napravili su prvu udrugu, biodinamička udruga u Australiji, i tu je krenula biodinamička poljoprivreda širom. Danas biodinamička poljoprivreda u Australiji, da spomenem samo najmanju farmu, je otprilike 200 hektara. Najveća farma koja radi biodinamiku je 500.000 hektara, što vam je otprilike cijela Istra.
Biodinamičko poljodjelstvo karakteristično je po pripravcima koji se spravljaju bez ikakve kemijske obrade. Vjeruje se da pripravci dinamiziraju i osnažuju tlo, ujedinjuju zdravu prirodu, život i kvalitetan urod. Hrvoje Novosel više od 10 godina primjenjuje biodinamičko poljodjelstvo u selu Horvati u Zagrebačkoj županiji. Uspoređivao je različite biodinamičke škole i njihove procese dobivanja pripravaka. Tako se upoznao i s australskom školom biodinamike.
Razlike između Westinghausenove germanske škole, Aleksove i australske škole je u tome što, vidjevši koprivu pripravak 504 i pripravak 507, koja je potpuno suha i prepoznatljiva kao kopriva, valerijana pripravak 507 se vidi njena tamna boja i nažalost to se ne može prenijeti na ekrane, ali jedan neugodan miris valerijane, zbog toga što je cijela biljka isprešana i filtrirana. Dok ovdje Aleksova škola, to jest australska škola, vidljivo je kako pripravak 504 kopriva je potpuno raspadnut, ima miris zemlje i izgleda kao zemlja, to jest kao humus, koloidni humus. Pripravak 507 valerijana je vrlo svijetle boje i izuzetno ugodnog mirisa. Zbog toga što se koriste samo cvjetovi natopljeni u vodi i tjedan dana sunčanja na suncu. Westinghausenova metoda mi nije bila prihvatljiva zbog toga što su pripravci suhi i logično je da pripravak koji je suh u sebi nema života, mikroorganizmi su mrtvi i nemoguće ih je ponovno vitalizirati i oživjeti. Dok metoda po Aleksu uistinu je izvrsna zbog toga što su pripravci humusni. Oni su puni života, puni mikroorganizma i vi možete te pripravke stavivši ih u zemlju, špricajući tlo se oživljava i vidljiva je razlika već nakon godinu dana. Zbog toga sam izuzetno zahvalan Aleksu što me uveo u taj proces života i oživljavanja tla. Biodinamika u Hrvatskoj je u začecima. Naravno, zadnjih 10-15 godina tu prevladava germanska škola. Evo, prošle godine došavši nam Aleks Podolinsky, unio je australsku školu i australsku metodu. vidio je kako smo siromašni, kako nemamo novaca, ta biodinamika se kreće na 3, 4, 10, 5 hektara i nakon što je otišao, samo nam je javio: dragi prijatelji, molim vas, javite se u Italiju, čekaju je strojevi za biodinamičku obradu tla. Mi oduševljeni, evo ga, biodinamika je krenula i dao nam je impuls, gurnuo nas je.
Zahvaljujući inicijativama Aleksa Podolinskog, strojeve za biodinamiku dobilo je gospodarstvo Jasminke i Željke Iličića u Koprivničko-križevačkoj županiji.
Aleksova posjeta prošle godine nas je poprilično iznenadila jer je bila organizirana u vrlo kratkom roku. Znali smo samo da nam dolazi jedan od najvećih živućih autoriteta o biodinamici i iskreno smo bili pomalo i uplašeni. Međutim, nakon što je čovjek došao sa svojim godinama koje nisu malene i sa svom energijom koju je donio sa sobom, sa znanjem, sa vjerom u ono što radi, sa iskustvom koje je donio sa sobom i na kraju sa jednim jako širokim srcem, nas je sve osvojio. Jer nakon samo 3 dana poznanstva i toga što smo mi njemu pokazivali kako radimo biodinamiku više srcem nego znanjem, je našoj udruzi poklonio stroj koji je poprilično vrijedan jer je smatrao da će nas najbrže dovesti do kvalitete zemlje koju imamo danas, što se pokazalo istinito.
Ono što nam se jako svidjelo kod Aleksa je biti upravo to da nije došao samo pripovijedati i propovijedati, nego upravo iz svog primjera pokazati kako pomagati biodinamičku poljoprivredu i biodinamičke farme. Upravo s ovim poklonom nam je pokazao da se to može.
Ono prelijepo, kad sam susreo Aleksa Podolinskog, je što on zrači jednostavnošću, kreativnošću. On je sam meni jednom spomenuo: jel vidiš, Hrvoje, da mogu se zezati više nego ti? Znači, a s druge strane, potpuno koncentriran i potpuno perceptivan, koji vidi stvarnost. Ne vidi ono površinsko tlo, nego vidi ono dubinu.
Thing that you always emphasize is observation. Observation you consider the main method of learning.
Of learning, yes.
Learning. Can you explain this philosophy and in fact in what way you see these types of classical science, as you call it, and hypothetical science? What are main differences and how does it affect our way of thinking and our knowledge?
Socrates had a big battle with Democritus, another philosopher, who was an atomist, and Socrates is the one who laid the foundation for European culture, succeeded by Plato and Aristotle. Today, modern science is, again, not only atomistic, working by adding little parts, it is also hypothetical. They don't. In classical science, you looked at the actual object. Now they have hypotheses. If you consider for one moment medicines that have been registered and agricultural chemicals by governments around the world as safe, guaranteeing to the population this is okay. Thalidomide or Contergan is the worst. That is a substance that was given to mothers, to women who were expecting a child to counter sickness, and it caused these malformed babies. DDT, DDE, Endrin, Dildrin, 2,4-D, all the agricultural chemicals. Nobody knows what they actually do. Likewise, GM or nanotechnology. The fact that they had to be withdrawn by governments because they're highly dangerous has not influenced governments to actually check on their methodicity of evaluation. That's why we now have GM. The same system is used. It will perhaps prove to be much more dangerous than DDT. You cannot imagine anything worse than these malformed babies. Well, that is not a science. They absolutely don't know what they're prescribing to the public, and the public is a guinea pig. So classical science today still works if deep down in the ocean with new equipment a creature is found that hadn't been seen before and is then classified to what family it belongs in zoology. That is classical physics. To work with a hypothesis at the start is no science at all. And I go by direct observation. I have a lump of humus. All the professors of agriculture I've just spoken to in lectures in Italy have never had in their hand a lump of humus. They don't know what it is. To them, they analyze humus. None has ever had any in his hands, but if they had any, they would analyze this by burning it in very great heat, making it into ash, and calculating the volume of carbon that is in it. But the carbon from peat moss, which can dribble down and not hold water, it's made into that, whereas humus is a living substance they have no idea of. You have to look at it, and first of all, it's a colloid. It holds the water and doesn't drip it out. I was asked after 2 years in Australia, when I already had success, by leading agronomists from our agriculture department, what of this humus can plants take in? And they assumed, because they're brainwashed by Justus von Liebig to water solubility, that it could only be humic acid. I took the whole substance and put it into a glass jar, a big one like this, open, buried it this far below pasture in spring, and in 6 weeks there was none of the brown substance left. There were only white hair roots, like plop, when you pull a piston out of an engine. That made me understand, and it's been accepted widely, that there are two root systems. The white hair roots, which are the feeder roots and go into the humus, and the dark roots, which bring up water that is supposed to be free of NPK, and is only free in nature's design before water-soluble fertilizers have poisoned it. It's really a poisoning. And so the first discovery were white hair roots. The second, you as men and animals have your own warmth household. When you have worked hard or physically or mentally, you need something to eat. Plants have no warmth organization. Sun warmth, not sunlight. Science knows, conventional science knows a little bit about photosynthesis, but has never considered the sun warmth. It is the warmth of the sun that tells a plant to send white hair roots into humus to eat. And under sun, in nature's design, under sun jurisdiction, the plants feed, never more and never less. It's like you being conscious of not wanting to be fat, not eating too much ice cream and stuff that your mouth likes, but eating just the right amount. Very few people do that today. But the design of nature for plant intake is exactly that. Whereas if you have put water-soluble fertilizer on, the plant has to take much too much because it is taking in the salts. With the water, it should transpire, and that's like breathing. The plants have to take in water to transpire, whether there is sun warmth or not, and that is all not understood in conventional science. Also, in conventional science, in botany, it is considered that female and male exists in the flower, and you play around breeding new plants. The real female side is Mother Earth, and they don't know how it functions. They know nothing about Mother Earth. The female side, say potatoes, conventionally, a conventional potato farmer must get new seed every year. We have the same seed for 30 years, and it's getting better and better. It is an activity of health of the soil, the plant taking in the right amount of elements. Every year, our wheat gets better. It is a plant breeding through the soil, functioning as nature designed it, instead of just through water solubles and through playing around with the male and female part in a flower, which is just a hypothesis. We could as well hypothesize that part of the male reproduction system is female and the other part is male. It could be just the same. So there is very little understanding in conventional science about soil or agriculture. Neither is there in biodynamic agriculture. It is the preparation suggestion of Steiner, which is a miracle. It is the way to activate the preparations and spread them. And then there is some cosmic chemistry which nobody really understands today and is not necessary. Now, to observation, what you asked, our farmers observe according to what I call active perception and see what next they have to do. It is actively looking and seeing much more, and I can prove that in my book, Active Perception, or when I have a lecture on that. It is much more than a photograph can see. It is an active, realistic, holistic system, whereas the conventional holistic system is just putting little bits together and calling that a holistic approach, and it isn't.
What do you think about harvest moon calendar? Harvest moon calendar.
The seed calendar.
Moon calendar for
moon
harvest.
Calendar. Yes. There is a certain justification for that, but where Maria Thun did her work, there are 12 mountains round her which belong to different Celtic beings, and it works there much better than, say, in Holland near the sea. The man who did her statistics, Dr. Hans Heinze, was a very close friend of mine, and we visited Maria Thun, and he pointed this out to me, that it is much more limited than she thinks, and then how it works in her environment. But that is the basic distinction of the four categories: root, leaf, flower, and fruit. We work with that, but she made a lot of additions that I think are overdone. Just like many philosophers, they had their main theme when they were 21, and then for the rest of their life they had to add to that, and it was very weak in comparison to their main theme.
Ok, hvala. I diljem Hrvatske inače postoje biodinamičari, pa da vidimo što oni rade. Posjetimo ih nekoliko.
Evo pogledajte kako je tlo strukturirano, kako se lijepo raspada, lagano je, nije tvrdo, puno je korijenja, što znači da je aktivnost mikrobiološka izuzetna, naravno zahvaljujući pripravku 500.
Biodinamička poljoprivreda u svojoj holističkoj filozofiji razmatra suptilne prirodne mehanizme, cikluse zemlje, sunca i zvijezda, koji na posljedku utiču na kvalitetu plodova i prinos poljoprivrednog zemljišta. Utemeljitelj biodinamičkog poljodjelstva je Rudolf Steiner, austrijski filozof koji je poznati kao utemeljitelj antrofozofije. Godine 1924. u nizu predavanja iznio je načela biodinamike za poljoprivrednike i članove antrofozofskog društva. Njegova razmišljanja o duhovnoj dimenziji i utjecaju nematerijalnih sila na fizički svijet dovela su do definiranja različitih zakonitosti, poput izrade biodinamičkih pripravaka. Vjeruje se da pripravci sadrže energije koje su značajne za vitalnost i reprodukciju. Dinamiziraju i osnažuju tlo, te tako donose superiornije plodove od svih drugih načina uzgoja. U njihovoj pripremi rabe se sastojci iz biljnog i životinskog svijeta bez bilo kakve kemijske obrade. Primjerice takozvani pripravci 500 i 501, gnoj i kremen iz kravljeg roga, rabe se za prskanje zemljišta. Biodinamičko poljodjelstvo primjenjuje se i u Hrvatskoj. Obiteljsko poljoprivredno gospodarstvo bračnog para Čegec iz Marinovca Zelinskog poznato je po proizvodnji vina, koje nosi oznaku eko.
Pripravak 500 se sastoji iz gnoja, znači iz kravljeg gnoja koji je odležao u kravljem rogu, koji se opet zakapa u jesen i preko zime je zakopan u zemlji, u proljeće i onda se taj pripravak posebno dinamizira i sa tom dinamiziranom vodom, s tim pripravkom se šprica tlo.
Krava ima 4 želuca i može probaviti velike količine hrane. Biodinamičari smatraju da se tijekom tog procesa otpuštaju energije koje rogovi i papci zadržavaju, a zatim ih ponovno zrače. Tako se ujedinjuju tvari iz mineralnog, biljnog i astralnog svijeta. Kravlji rog rabi se kao spremište gnoja koji će poslije omogućiti izgradnju plodne humusne zemlje prožete sa snagama života. Tu su i kompostni pripravci od stolisnika, kamilice, koprive, hrastove kore, maslačka, valerijane i tako dalje.
Kompost je isto veoma važan u biodinamičkoj poljoprivredi jer treba u tlu točno uravnotežiti tvorbu humusa i mineralizaciju. Važna je ta ravnoteža.
Pokazat ću vam kako se miješa pripravak 500. Možemo ga miješati samo u rosvrajnim posudama, keramičkim i bakrenima. S tim da voda mora biti mlačna, znači malo podgrijana i koristimo izvorsku vodu ili vodu čistu kišnicu. Kad miješamo, počinjemo izvana posude prema unutra, napravimo veliki vrtlog i krenemo u suprotnom smjeru da se napravi kaos. Kad se napravi kaos, tu dođe do stvaranja reda, znači kao što je i u svemiru.
Pripravak 500 se šprica, važno je da dođe na tlo. Dakle, tlo mora biti ili pokošeno ili obrađeno, bilo kako. Znači, ne smije biti visoka trava. Znači, taj pripravak mora doći do tla. I važno je da ne bude zemlja presuha. To se mora raditi uvijek pod večer i poslije kiše ili kad je vlažna zemlja. Dakle, ne po suhoj zemlji, nego poslije 5 sati popodne pa do večera se šprica sa tim pripravkom. Šprica mora biti obavezno bakrena i ima posebnu dizu, tako da se može, da se sa 35 do 25 do 35 litara vode pošprica 1 hektar. A isto tako pripravak 501 koji se šprica ujutro ne smije se špricati za vrijeme suše jer on pospješuje takozvano znojenje biljaka, još više bi otpustile vodu. Znači, za vrijeme suše 501 ne špricamo.
Načela biodinamičke poljoprivrede primjenjuju se i na gospodarstvu Jasminke i Željka Iličića, koji su na svome imanju u Koprivničko-križevačkoj županiji posadili 2 hektara kupina.
Kad smo kupili zemlju ovdje, zemlja je u selu zvučala kao jedna od najlošijih tala u okolini i seljani su nam se smijali kao ljudima iz grada koji su došli nešto čeprkat po zemlji. Govorili su da apsolutno ništa od zemlje nećemo dobiti, pogotovo su se iznenadili kad smo odlučili se baviti uzgojem kupina za koje ovdje uopće nitko u okolini ne zna. Već prve godine smo došli u kontakt sa Biodynamicom i uspjeli smo nabaviti pripravke. Tretirali smo zemlju sa 500-ticom, tretirali smo biljke sa 500 jedinicom i prvi urod je bio izuzetan u kvaliteti. Kad smo nosili kupine na analizu, vrlo su se čudili da je to prva godina uroda jer je kupina bila vrlo slatka i postotak suhe tvari je bio vrlo visok. Jedna od stvari koju radimo drugačije i način na koji drugačije obrađujemo zemlju je češljanje zemlje. Biodinamika se ne slaže sa oranjem i sa prevrtanjem zemlje, nego sa češljanjem zemlje i dovođenjem kisika u zemlju kao najvažnijeg sastojka zemlje.
Zemlja, da bi bila aktivna i živa, potreban je zrak, zbog toga što mikroorganizmi, gujavice, bakterije žive od zraka. I ta prozračenost, po tome se može prepoznati životnost tla i biodinamička poljoprivreda.
Sad smo na zemlji koja je jesenas tretirana 500-ticom i prije tjedan dana je obrađena sa češljevima koje nam je Alex poklonio. Zemlja nakon tjedan dana izgleda ovako. Krajnji rezultat je rahla, podatna zemlja u kojoj se može bilo šta posijati. Evo ga, za usporedbu ću samo pokazati kako izgleda zemlja koju smo obrađivali prije otprilike 2 mjeseca. Isto je jesenas tretirana 500-ticom, ali nije češljana. Na nju smo kasnije posadili bunde. Znači, zemlja je opet rahla, ima nešto malo više grudica od onoga tamo, ali je skroz upotrebljiva. Još za finalnu usporedbu ono s čim smo u stvari počeli, a to je evo zemlja par koraka od nas. Ja, nažalost, ne mogu u zemlju hendlat, zato mi treba ipak muška ruka mog dragog.
Lopatica neće biti dovoljna ovdje, jer ovdje će trebati biti malo više sile. Znači zemlja koja je puno kompaktnija. Gromade zemlje koja se doduše lomi, ali puno je kompaktnija. Zašto je to tako?
Ova zemlja naravno je u konvencionalnoj obradi. Ništa ekološko vidjela nije, vidi dosta pesticida, vidi dosta herbicida, isključivo ono što se na njoj uzgaja kuruza. Nema nikakvih plemenitih biljaka i to je stvar koja se ponavlja svake godine.
Unatoč tome što skeptici smatraju da se načela biodinamike temelje na silama koje nisu fizikalno dokazane, zadovoljni vlasnici imanja diljem svijeta nastavljaju ih praktično primjenjiti.
To je inače jako sretni s našim kupinama kojih radimo sok i imamo već velik broj kupaca kroz kojih smo se osvjedočili koliko je ta kupina zdrava, jer je jako bogata željezom. Mi svi volimo reći kako kupina bogata željezom i lijepo dobro je piti, ali meni je jako drago čuti kada ljudi koji piju naš sok, a inače su recimo imali problema, nam dođu sa pričama da im je krvna slika, da su iznenadili doktore i da se svi pitaju šta se dogodilo, da im je krvna slika daleko bolja.
Biljke doživljavam normalno i pomalo kao i duhovna bića. Zapravo nositelje života na zemlji. Jedino biljke mogu stvoriti ovu organsku tvar koju mi iz životinje i sav drugi svijet živi upotrebljava. Dakle, one ne samo iz tla, nego iz sunčeve topline i svjetlosti tvore ove svoje organe. Dakle, zato biljka zavređuju veliko poštovanje.
Steiner je smatrao kako je u poljoprivrednim kulturama, tlu i mineralima prisutan utjecaj životne sile. Imanje je poput organizma, čiji su organi oranice, livade, voćnjaci, biljke, životinje i čovjek.
What are legal frames for biodynamics if we consider the fact that today all agricultures, there is tendency to put all agriculture in a few rules, in strict laws and everything else? Of course, there is a great influence of industry in it. What are these, let's say, legal point of view toward biodynamics?
Well, as to the actual practice, there are no legal forms at all. Farmers choose what works, and what we do works. It performs. There are standards for certification. Ours are based on results of soil structure, of upper plant expression biodynamic, which we can all demonstrate. I did not know what you were going to ask me. I would have brought some photos or some pictures that I could show here on the table, but conventionally the standards are based on no fertilizer, no chemicals, and organic agriculture and biodynamic agriculture, as generally practiced in Europe, uses the same soil cultivation methods as conventional agriculture, and uses inputs, understands organic agriculture as using manure from organic animals and putting on water-soluble NPK through chicken manure, exactly the same as sulfate of ammonia in conventional agriculture, does not understand that the water solubility is the problem. And you can have that with chicken manure just as much as with urea. So there are standards that don't understand what actually organic agriculture would mean. But there are no laws.
What's your opinion about GMOs and nanotechnology? In fact, what is that thing that is missing in that way of thinking? Is it possible to make improvement in living organisms? Or is it possible to make, in fact, we still didn't make any new living organisms. So what do you think there, because we are overwhelmed by this huge propaganda that is talking about saving the world with GMOs and everything else, but results are very common, quite opposite. So what is the main problem and why is this all done?
First of all, none of the scientists developing these methods know anything about the design of nature, how plants should actually feed. As I have tried to describe in a short interview like this, one can't do justice to the subject, but I have tried. That is the first. The second is science. I write of this in the new introduction to the second edition of my book, Active Perception. Science uses computers. A motor car engine in 1930, there was one very good one, that was the A model Ford. Many others had bad faults. Today, no engine has a bad fault, even in a cheap car, because computers design most of the engines. Now, that can be in the second, third, and fourth generation of computers. Man actually has almost nothing to do with the design. And so is it in science methodicity. You can have that several times over. A computer suggests to man technically what he can do. For instance, to take a gene from a salmon in Canada and put it into a tomato in Croatia. You have tomatoes that will last hard like a golf ball for weeks. It never tastes like a tomato, but it looks like a tomato, and people will buy it because through supermarkets they've lost judgment of taste and what actually a plant should look like. It is very dangerous. And as I said before, governments register these products, allow them, just like they've allowed Contergan and DDT, without having any knowledge. And the whole system is totally against creation of nature. It is suggested without morality, because a man didn't actually design it. Equipment designed it and put it into the mind of the man that he could do that. And nanotechnology, well, at the IFOAM conference, triannual conference, where there were, I was told, 700 scientists from over 50 countries at my lecture. I didn't count them. I didn't see them. It was dark. I put up two main points. That was in Adelaide, in Australia. The one was, in your model, you have, of agriculture, you have no bank to store water-soluble elements. You put them on all the time and they run out through the soil into the river and cause blue-green algae and poison the river. Animals can't drink from there. And I showed how humus is that bank in the design of nature. 2 months later, from our ag department, because I had stung them like a bee, came an article, with nanotechnology we'll be able to hold the elements and let them go when we like. Well, that belongs into an asylum. That is totally illogical, and they'll never be able to do it. We have in medicine also developments, stem cell developments. So far, after many, many years and huge amounts of money, nobody is walking who had a spine that was cut. There have been no results yet. Well, but there could be very evil results with nanotechnology. For one, a lot of nanotechnology is actually today available in cosmetica, and if any of that gets into the air, it is so fine it can cause the same problem as asbestos poisoning. We will have to wait and see. It's dealing with totally unnatural substances that would never have existed on Earth. But man has the ability to think with fantasy. A major new sickness on Earth is depression. And depression starts with people who have no content to think about, imagining the house will burn at night or some other tragedy will happen. which very likely won't happen at all, but they oppress themselves. And from a similar freedom of fantasy, which is can run chaotic, have we got in science some developments that will never happen in nature. So that is how I look at it.
It's nice to hear that biodynamics is so developed. It's now nice to hear that biodynamics is so developed in Australia, because very often one can hear opinions about biodynamics that are negative. In a way, you know, they use some strange things. You know, they are talking about some living force and everything else.
Yes, I know.
But in fact, biodynamics is well studied and has lots of experiments done that show quite clearly that really this is a good technique without chemicals, without fertilizers, without every poison. But how is possible so simple and so effective technique is still under this same initiations that some people put etiquette?
There is not much evidence made in Europe. Just little tests on paper. You want big results on big acreages like we have. You want a method of agriculture which we've developed in Australia, and I'm bringing back from Australia to here, of how to actually function on a farm. None of that is in agricultural course of Steiner. And it is... Agriculture means soil culture. There's nothing about how to farm in the agricultural course, and there's nothing about how to farm in universities. Neither of them have discovered that all the soils are so dead and what to do about it. They're here and the soils have gone bad. And I can explain why they've gone bad. And recover, with new methods, recover the soil fertility. We've had a result yesterday on a farm only in 1 year, just like I show in my books, where there is a very clear result. You should be out there and film it. So there is... Farmers look for real evidence on soil, and the public also. And, well, if you have artificial tomatoes, you cut them open, you have big white... stems inside, you have 2 or 3 little holes of red. If you cut open a biodynamic tomato or a naturally grown tomato without putting fertilizer on or putting chicken pellets on in organic agriculture, that is permitted input farming. That is the same as conventional farming. If you have that, you have a red tomato which is sweet. The bitterness of the conventional tomatoes are excess nitrates and very thin white ribbing only that you hardly see, and a beautiful tomato. The same with lettuces or with mandarins, conventional mandarins. You have a whole lot of dry skin afterwards. With a biodynamic or naturally grown mandarin, you don't. So you can see and eat the difference. If you train people to notice it, they will choose food as it is healthy for them.
And food is, of course, a source of health, in fact, because...
Well, our farming method is a growing of health, not a healing of sickness. In organic, so-called agriculture, they all the time have pests, and pests are there where plants are sick to get rid of them. They have a positive action. In the only time a professor of agriculture at a university, when I have spoken there, has put up an argument was in Kiev, which is partly named after my grandfather. And when I showed pictures of vegetables produced by Agri Latina, he said it's not ecological because there are no pests. Yeah. Well, pests are there where plants are sick. And we have exact counts, say, of red spider eggs on fruit trees, biodynamic, and beside it, conventional, 6,400 to 600. The 600 don't do any damage. They're there in nature, and
they all live together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hvala, Alex. Do sljedeće prilike. Thank you very much for coming and visit us. Our time is out. So, naravno, želim Aleksu još dobrih pola stoljeća na ovih 55 godina koliko se već bavi promocijom biodinamike. I naravno, čiji australski primjer pokazuje da su njeni potencijali još dosta neotkriveni i na kraju krajeva izvorna životna sila ima svoja pravila, pa ako se ona shvati i ako se na neki način promotri dobro, onda se zapravo može biti samo na dobitku i osoba i okoliš i sve zapravo treba biti kao što i jest zamišljeno, da nema gubitaša. Laku noć.